My name is Evelyn Reed. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a senior financial analyst for a wealth management firm. The scent of roasting turkey and cinnamon filled my brother Mark and his wife Sarah's overly decorated dining room, a smell that usually brought comfort, but tonight felt like a shroud. I sat quietly at the end of the table, nursing a glass of lukewarm iced tea, listening as Mark, with a performative sigh, began his familiar lament. "The old cabin, Evelyn," he said, shaking his head. "It's practically falling apart. Needs a fortune poured into it. Sarah and I have been talking, and honestly, with your situation, we figured you'd be happy for us to take the lead on the renovations. We'll cover the lion's share, of course, but a small contribution from you would really help us get started." He gestured vaguely, as if the cabin itself was a burden he was heroically shouldering. Sarah chimed in, "It's just so much for us, Ev. And you know, with your more modest income, we wouldn't want to burden you too much." My modest income was a deliberate fiction I'd cultivated for the past 3 years. I simply nodded, offering a small, uncertain smile, my heart a tight knot in my chest. They had no idea that my quiet observation, my seemingly naive acceptance, was not a sign of weakness, but the very foundation of their undoing. To understand why I played this role, you need to know my family. My parents, bless their practical hearts, were small business owners who instilled in me the value of hard work and financial independence. Mark, my older brother by 5 years, was cut from a different cloth. He always had a grand scheme, a shortcut to success that inevitably led to debt and appeals for help. Sarah, his wife, was his perfect complement, charming on the surface, but with a keen eye for opportunity, especially if that opportunity involved someone else's resources. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the one who excelled in math and saved her allowance. Mark was the charismatic leader, the one who always needed a loan for a new venture, a favor to cover a bill. Our parents, ever generous, often obliged, hoping he'd find his footing. After they passed away 5 years ago, leaving a modest estate divided equally between us, including the beloved, if rustic, lakeside cabin, Mark and Sarah saw a new wellspring. Initially, I tried to be supportive. I lent money when Mark's surefire tech startup fizzled. I covered expenses for what he called essential maintenance on the cabin, only to find out later he'd used the funds for a luxury weekend trip. Each time, I'd express mild concern, perhaps a hesitant question about repayment, and each time, they'd reassure me with vague promises and dismissive smiles, often hinting that I simply didn't understand the big picture. The turning point came 3 years ago. I'd just landed my senior analyst position, a significant step up in my career, but I kept it quiet. Around the same time, Mark had convinced me to invest in his latest venture, a dubious online retail platform. He'd spun a compelling tale, complete with impressive-looking but ultimately meaningless charts. When I gently suggested we get a lawyer to review the partnership agreement, he laughed, "Evelyn, you're so sweet and naive. This is family. Lawyers just complicate things." I lost a significant sum, and it was then I realized that my kindness, my desire for family harmony, was being interpreted as gullibility. They didn't respect me, they merely saw me as a resource. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but it taught me a crucial lesson. I decided then and there that I would change the dynamic. I started dressing down for family gatherings, driving my older, reliable sedan, and speaking vaguely about making ends meet. I acted poor and naive, and they walked right into the trap. The cabin had always been a point of contention. Our parents loved it, but it was old, requiring constant upkeep. Mark and Sarah saw it as a potential cash cow, a property they could eventually sell for a tidy profit, ideally without me getting an equal share. After the turkey dinner, the cabin renovation talks escalated. Mark presented me with a binder filled with glossy brochures for high-end fixtures and elaborate landscaping plans. "We're talking a complete overhaul, Ev," he said, flipping through pages of granite countertops and infinity pools. "We've got quotes from a contractor, a friend of Sarah's, for almost $250,000. We need your commitment for half of that, just to get the ball rolling." He slid a single page across the table, a handwritten estimate with no company letterhead, just a total amount. I picked it up, my brow furrowed in a practiced show of confusion. $250,000? That seems a lot for a cabin, Mark. Are you sure? Sarah scoffed gently. Oh, Evelyn, you just don't understand how these things work. Quality costs. But don't worry, we'll manage the whole thing. You just send the money. I nodded slowly, putting the sheet back down. Okay, I said, I'll think about it. It's just a big number. What I didn't understand yet was the depth of their entitlement. A few weeks later, Mark called me, sounding exasperated. Evelyn, we need to move on this cabin. Sarah's contractor friend can only hold the quote for so long. We need your half of the deposit, $50,000, by the end of the month. He spoke as if I was holding up a critical national project. I hesitated. $50,000? Mark, that's a lot for me right now. Things are a bit tight. Well, you want your share of the cabin to be worth something, don't you? He pressed, his voice losing its patient facade. This is an investment, Evelyn. You're part owner. You have to contribute. I promised to see what I could do, playing the reluctant, struggling sibling. That detail mattered later. I knew the cabin, knew its bones. $250,000 for renovations was exorbitant. I quietly contacted a local, reputable contractor I found through a colleague at work. He gave me a detailed, itemized estimate for a full, high-quality renovation that came in at just under $120,000. Mark's friend was inflating the costs by more than double. The next incident came at my niece's birthday party. I was helping Sarah set up the dessert table when I overheard her talking to her sister, Brenda, in the kitchen. Honestly, Brenda, Evelyn is such a pushover, Sarah whispered, not bothering to lower her voice much. Mark has her convinced that cabin needs a fortune, and she just nods along. We'll get her to pay for most of it, then when we sell, we'll take our cut first for all our hard work. She'll never even question it. She's too sweet and simple. Brenda giggled. She always was a bit of a doormat, wasn't she? My hand, holding a plate of cupcakes, trembled slightly. I felt a cold anger replace the familiar ache of disappointment. They didn't just think I was naive, they actively mocked my perceived weakness. It wasn't just about money, it was about their contempt. That was when the numbers stopped looking accidental. I realized they weren't just trying to extract money, they were attempting to systematically diminish my stake in the family assets, leveraging my poor naive persona to do it. They were planning to bleed me dry and then discard me. I understood then that I couldn't just reclaim my money, I had to reclaim my dignity and establish an ironclad boundary. My preparation was meticulous. While still maintaining my facade of financial struggle, I started building my case. I consulted a real estate lawyer, Ms. Ramirez, who specialized in estate disputes. She advised me on my rights regarding the jointly owned cabin and the estate. I gathered every piece of correspondence related to the cabin, texts from Mark about renovations, emails from Sarah about shared costs, and the handwritten estimate. I also compiled a comprehensive list of every loan and investment I had made to Mark over the years, complete with dates and amounts, many of which were undocumented beyond casual texts. Ms. Ramirez helped me draft a formal letter to Mark and Sarah, demanding an itemized accounting of all expenses related to the cabin and the estate, citing my rights as a co-owner. I also quietly obtained a professional, independent appraisal of the cabin's current market value, as well as the detailed, legitimate renovation estimate. I made sure all my personal finances were in order, securing my assets in accounts they couldn't touch. I even changed the locks on the cabin, citing security concerns for the vacant property. The decisive action came a month later. Mark called a family meeting at his house, ostensibly to finalize the cabin renovation plans. He sounded impatient, hinting that my delay was costing them money. We need to get this sorted, Evelyn, he said, before we miss out on Sarah's contractor deal. I agreed to meet, but this time, I arrived differently. Instead of my usual simple sweater and jeans, I wore a sharp, tailored pantsuit, the kind I wore for important client meetings. I carried my old, slightly worn, but sturdy leather briefcase, the one they'd always ignored, assuming it held nothing more than a few loose papers. Mark and Sarah were already seated at the dining table, looking confident, almost smug. They had their glossy brochures spread out. "All right, Evelyn," Mark began, tapping the handwritten estimate. "We're ready to move forward. Just need that $50,000 from you, and we can get started." Sarah nodded, a patronizing smile on her face. "It's for the best, dear. You'll thank us when it's all done." I took a deep breath, the familiar scent of cinnamon from their potpourri suddenly cloying. "Actually, Mark, Sarah," I said, my voice calm and clear, "I won't be contributing to your renovation plans." Their smiles faltered. Mark frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You agreed." I opened my briefcase, the soft click echoing in the sudden silence. I pulled out a neatly organized stack of documents. "I agreed to consider it," I corrected him. "And after careful consideration, I've decided against it. Instead, I've had the cabin independently appraised." I slid the appraisal report across the table. "Its current market value, as is $280,000. I also obtained a legitimate, itemized renovation estimate from a licensed contractor, which totals $118,000 for a complete, high-quality overhaul." I then placed Mark's handwritten estimate next to it. "Your contractor friend's quote of $250,000 for the same work is, shall we say, significantly inflated." Mark's face went pale. Sarah gasped, her patronizing smile vanishing. "Evelyn, what is this?" she stammered. "This," I said, sliding a formal letter from Ms. Ramirez across the table, "is a legal offer. Given your history of financial mismanagement and your attempts to exploit my perceived naivety, I am exercising my right as a co-owner of the estate. I am offering to buy out your share of the cabin, your half of the $280,000 valuation, less any legitimate, documented expenses you can prove you've incurred for the cabin's upkeep, and less the total of all outstanding loans you owe me, which I have itemized here." I pushed another document, a detailed ledger of their debts, towards them. "If you refuse, I will initiate a partition action to force the sale of the property on the open market, and all proceeds will be divided fairly after legal fees and outstanding debts are settled." Mark shot up from his chair, his face flushed with anger. "You can't do this. This is family. You're trying to ruin us." "No, Mark," I replied, my voice unwavering. "You tried to ruin me. You underestimated me. You thought I was poor and naive, easy to manipulate. You never expected me to do my homework, did you? You never expected me to understand the numbers." Sarah started to cry, a performative wail. "How could you, Evelyn? After everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I asked, a bitter laugh escaping me. "You've taken from me. You've dismissed me. You've laughed at me behind my back. This isn't about family, it's about respect. And you showed me none." The meeting ended in a flurry of accusations and threats, but I remained calm. Ms. Ramirez's letter, with its legal weight, was undeniable. Mark and Sarah fought it for weeks, trying to rally other family members to their side, but my documentation was too thorough, my position too strong. The independent appraisal and the legitimate renovation quote exposed their scheme for what it was. Other family members, who had also been quietly taken advantage of by Mark and Sarah over the years, started to see the truth. Ultimately, they had no choice. Faced with the certainty of a forced sale and the public exposure of their financial misdeeds, they reluctantly agreed to my buyout offer. The process was cold and formal, handled entirely through our lawyers. I paid them their due share of the cabin's value, after deducting their documented debts to me and the estate. It was significantly less than they had hoped for, but it was fair, and it was legally binding. The cabin is mine now. I've started the renovations, using the legitimate contractor's estimate. It's becoming the peaceful retreat our parents always envisioned. Sometimes, I sit on the porch, looking out at the lake, the quiet lapping of the water a soothing rhythm. My old leather briefcase now sits on a shelf in my home office, a reminder not of what I lost, but of what I gained. It's no longer just a functional accessory, it's a symbol of quiet strength, of meticulous preparation, and of the power of being underestimated. The silence from Mark and Sarah is the most precious renovation of all.